It's Monday. You know what that means. Like a lot of you, I spent the bulk of the weekend still kind of wrapping my head around and still reeling from the news of the sudden passing of Jon Huber, better known in WWE as Luke Harper, and then in AEW and the Independents as Brodie Lee. He passed away the day after Christmas at the age of 41 due to what his wife called a non-COVID-related lung condition. And because a few of you asked me to do so, I want to talk for a bit about him, and do my best to pay my respects to a man who, if social media is to be believed, a great man among men. I remember being in my kitchen on Saturday afternoon and pulling my phone out for the 100th time that day, because that's what I do. And I was going through Instagram and I saw that AEW had posted their message about Jon Huber. And it took me a couple of seconds to look at it and realize, oh my God, this is an obituary. Like, Brodie Lee is dead. What happened? How did this happen? Someone who's so young, the prime of his life and prime of his career, to be struck down like that. And then, you kind of put the pieces together and you realize, oh, that might be why he was gone after the dog collar match with Cody. And then the statement his wife put out, like, it all starts to make sense. And like, it's just so damn tragic. I felt so just like, heartbroken for everybody. First, it was just, for his fans and for his family and everything. And then I went on to Twitter and I saw just like my whole timeline ever since Saturday afternoon has been like 90 to 100% filled with just tribute after tribute after tribute from wrestler after wrestler after wrestler and everyone else involved in wrestling. People who knew Brodie Lee for, a day or for years, and having all these amazing stories about how Brodie touched them and impacted their lives and made them feel special or loved or cared about or relieved their anxiety about something. That kind of impact that Brodie had on people. Not too many people have that effect on like everyone they seem to come in contact with. And I know that, it's very rare when somebody who is well liked publicly dies. You don't see a whole lot of people speaking negatively about them. But like this, it feels more real and truer than anything I've ever seen before in recent times. Like, no one has a bad thing to say about Brodie Lee, and has nothing but wonderful things to say about him as a person and as a wrestler and as a human being, a family man, like all these things going for him. And then it's all just gone in the blink of an eye. Everything with the circumstances surrounding Brodie's death is tragic. Not just his age, but also the fact, he did, like I mentioned, he did have that positive effect on like everybody he seemed to encounter in wrestling. He had a family, and he had a very well-known, well-publicized love of that family, a family that now has a huge void left in it. And, besides all the important stuff, the things that, truly matter, life and happiness and family and stuff like that, on the wrestling side of things, he was a great talent who had a lot of things seemingly lined up to a place where you just knew that his career could have taken off into space if you gave him a little more time. What's so ironic about this death is, in an industry that has a long, storied history of premature death, it's ironic that his death seemingly has nothing to do with the business that he was in. And more than his in-ring stuff, I believe that in the long run, Brodie is going to be remembered more for what he did outside the ring and backstage than what he did, in it. I think he'll be remembered more for his character as a human being and the ability to make everyone smile or forget about their troubles for a little bit, and how he affected all those lives around him. Which is not to say he wasn't memorable in the ring, because he was. I enjoyed watching his matches. I've not seen any of his stuff before he got signed. I didn't see any of his stuff in the independents like Chikara or CZW or anything like that, but I've heard good things about it. And watching him as Luke Harper in WWE, I remember he had a mysterious quality about him, as someone who was really unfamiliar with his work, mysterious quality about him that really separated him from the trope of just kind of the Haas henchman that we saw around that time period. It wasn't until his run against Dolph Ziggler for the Intercontinental Championship in 2014 where I really began to see what his potential was as a solo guy, and I really began to root for him in that capacity. And God, you can go back and watch my older videos around the time and hear the disappointment in my voice and see it in my face, how he was not utilized better in that, storyline with Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt around the title a few years ago. And this video, by the way, is not meant to be knocking any company for anything right now. So I just want to get that out of the way. I don't want this to be a place where people start nitpicking over how he was treated in what companies, okay? But I do think that, there was a couple points in that time in the company we went, man, you just wish there was more for him like that. I see all these stories from people saying how happy they were for him when he got signed to WWE and how he really deserved it, how good he was at it. And so not just for me as a fan and as an observer, but for all the compatriots and the colleagues around him who really wanted to see him succeed, I felt that there was this ceiling he kept bumping into in WWE. And I'll admit, I initially rolled my eyes over the whole Bludgeon Brothers gimmick. I thought it was a little goofy, but the more they went on with it, and when they got past that squash match phase of their run, I thought they were as good as they ever were when they were a team with Bray Wyatt. I thought they had a great chemistry. He and Eric Rowan, really underrated tag team there in WWE. And, you know, I, along with so many others, were so happy for him and the potential he had when he went to AEW. And hearing that he spoke up about wanting to be involved in the Dark Order. It wasn't something assigned to him by creative. He volunteered. He wanted that role of being the exalted one of the Dark Order. And he had a killer debut. Oh, God, it's so crazy to think that everything that happened with him in AEW and his death all happened within the same year. He had a killer debut, and he was booked like a monster. He destroyed Cody to win the TNT Championship. He fought for the World Championship, and he had great matches while he was there. And, you know, it feels so trivial to talk about the wrestling stuff, you know, when there's so much more in the bigger picture to talk about, like his life and like his legacy and like his family and whatnot. But I think it also speaks a lot to his character, because a common thing I saw from people who knew him was a story of him betting on himself, you know, taking that leap in AEW, and things were really lining up. Like, I mean, he was 41 years old, but he still had so much left to give, you could argue. And I think there was a lot left on the table in that regard. So there are a whole lot of what ifs in Brodie Lee's career. You know, it's hard to avoid talking about the what ifs, because that is such a vital component of why people like him so much. And not so much the wrestlers, but the fans as well, who may have had that kind of connection with him, but also kind of rooting for him, kind of like what I was doing, rooting for him because you know he's capable of doing so much more. And for whatever reason, it just didn't pan out that way in that early going. But you had this feeling in AEW where had things, you know, played out and had he stayed healthy, who knows how much further he could have gone. And I know it's been said by a lot of people on more than one occasion, but seriously, to hell with 2020. This year has just been the absolute worst in so many reasons, and what a downer way to end this already crappy year by having somebody so good and so well respected and so well liked as Brodie Lee passing at this tragically young age. If there is one silver lining about this whole tragic ordeal, it's that the passing of Brodie Lee has brought the wrestling world together unanimously. And I mean that because, you know, wrestlers and fans and media types alike can hardly agree on the color of the sky, much less any particular take on wrestling. But the fact that everyone came together to pay tribute and to share their stories and their sorrow and their grief and their moments of happiness with Brodie Lee, you know, it just makes you realize how amazing of a person Jon Huber was and how deeply he's going to be missed. So what are some of your favorite memories of Brodie Lee / Luke Harper? What are some of your favorite matches and moments of his? Let me know in the comment section below. One of my personal favorites is the Shield versus the Wyatt family at Elimination Chamber 2014. His brutal dog collar match, the last match he ever had against Cody Rhodes for the TNT Championship, was great as well. And of course, I'm thinking now more recently to some of the funnier stuff he did on being the Elite as leader of the Dark Order. Some great stuff there, and just shows you more of how dynamic he was as a personality. So thanks everyone for watching this video, and there's one more message to tell the folks in your life that you love them and you care for them, because, you know, tomorrow is never guaranteed. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.